Hey, good morning, YouTube. How's everybody doing today? Welcome to the chat. Had to get my cup of coffee going, get it ready. It was delayed. So let's get this rolling. Obviously, the hurricane is the center of, it seems like 90% of any news. So everybody probably knows about it. But as we discussed yesterday, people seem to know about things, but they still don't get prepared. But everything I've seen so far is everybody is getting out of the way of the storm that can. Anecdotal and otherwise. But other on the Weather Channel, because that's the only thing that's on the Weather Channel. Literally. Everything is about the hurricane. I don't think we've ever seen it like that before. But expected to be some big impacts, it looks like. So let's roll into a couple stories about that. Everything I've seen from people I know on the coast are leaving to higher ground. There are a couple still in on the Carolina coast I know that are like wrapping up, boarding up buildings and stuff, but their plan is still to leave by tonight, before dark. So, but yeah, welcome. Good morning, Walter Davis, Tommy Boy 9. Good morning. Like button number 1. Right on. And Barry Woods with us this morning. Good morning. Yeah, Tommy Boy, the track has changed a little bit, I guess. It kind of nudged itself into a leftward lean, I guess you'd say, as they kind of show in here. It was kind of trending up this way. Now it's kind of trending more angle and back to the left, kind of like making a 7, I guess. I don't know how to describe it, but they're definitely saying it's changed a little bit. But there's a couple of stories here. Let's see what they got to say here to update us. Let's see what the most. This is less than an hour ago, so we'll go with that.
Tracking Hurricane Florence, the latest is in the 8 o'clock update, and it is still a monster Category 4 storm. Time is running out. This storm is less than 600 miles to the east of the Carolina coastline. Catastrophic rain, damaging winds, and a prolonged threat that extends far inland will exist right through the weekend. There's a storm winds of 130 miles per hour. Now, this has not gained or lost strength since the 5 a.m. update. Here's a look at the track. Still hanging this storm off to the south as it makes landfall. Now, landfall timing is getting trickier. Will we see a landfall Friday afternoon or early Saturday morning? So that's getting pushed back some. Also note the intensity of this storm stays extreme right until landfall. Now, how far south this takes a turn is going to play into whether we see an earlier or a later landfall. What we are getting better agreement on is the catastrophic rainfall that we could see, calling for right now 40 inches along the North Carolina coast. But look how far that range stretches inland. So we could see flooding, catastrophic rain as far to the west as Athens, Columbia, even Charlotte. Storm surge forecast could be over 10 feet along the North Carolina and South Carolina coastline.
So there's that part of the update. That's the latest from this morning. 40 inches would not be a fun deal. I don't think, Tommy Boy, you're going to get anything more than rain where you're located. You're kind of positioned far enough over the mountains that you're probably not concerned, but you could see the whole ridge up what would be called the Blue Ridge from Asheville up through western North Carolina is going to be getting storm level rain. But it's looking pretty grim for most people that are out there on the coast. But like we said, a lot are leaving. Another thing I saw was that Camp Lejeune, which is basically right in that path. If you know where Camp Lejeune is, right north of Wilmington, they're not evacuating. The base commander came out yesterday, I guess. I was looking for a story about it. Let me see if I can pull it up. Yeah, so Lejeune posted a message from the base commander, General Alford, and basically lining out why they're not going to leave and etc. Fortunately, it's mostly brick construction. I think the probably will be in concrete. And the thing is, if we'd have been building buildings to withstand Russian attack, you would think that some of this stuff would hold up. But I don't know that any of that modern construction is designed for such things. And I know whenever anytime you're in Japan or anywhere else, you always ride out typhoons and stuff. So for most, or old timers, probably the new timers are probably not sure what's going on. But yeah, they posted that they're not going to evacuate. They have hardened infrastructure, support system. Obviously, the military's full of fuel trucks, generators, etc. You would expect they would be able to, if anybody would be prepared for this, you would hope it would be, a Marine base, especially. They've even got boats for rescue and everything else with the Zodiacs and everything else like that, if needed. But it's not a mandatory evacuation. Obviously, people can evacuate if they want. Somebody had posted comments that I had seen asking about the families and why they're free to leave. They're not being denied, but they did post the maps of previous events where there had been flooding. This was the 2016 Matthew hurricane, and they showed all the different choke points that had been flooded out, and all of them basically surround Lejeune, which is down here in this area off Jacksonville. So basically, anyway you went, you were going to run into a flooded road if you didn't leave early. So if they're not out now, they might have issues because there is flooding already reported. But reading the comments is pretty funny because I think some of them are tongue in cheek and other ones are seriously like your typical worried mom syndrome, I think. Hey, we got Walter Food Force Permaculture's joined us. Good morning. How you doing? I would imagine you're doing quite well compared to the Carolina coast. Irish USMC vet, good morning. Yes, break out the ponchos and rollerblades. I wonder if the package store was closed early. Limit one case per Marine, right? The hurricane party has started. Yeah, we rode out the hurricane that came into Hawaii, Aniki back in '93. We rode that out. Um, won't be nothing. I mean, it could be something, but you do what you got to do. It's kind of expected that you should be able to ride something like this out um, and recover appropriately after the fact. It's been raining where you are, Food Forest. Hey, Ann. Good morning. How you doing? FEMA was saying people need to leave, but the base commander said you don't have to. I think if you haven't left Lejeune, you're not able to at this point with the weather we were looking at and the storm track and such were the way it was that we just listened to another short clip looking at fall tomorrow night. Links are in your description box below. Obviously, it's all over the weather. It's the only thing on the Weather Channel. Is literally the only thing on the Weather Channel. But the big concern is that it might stall on the coast and tip slightly south. Is what they're looking out now for the storm track. A lot of people in the mountains are concerned. I was getting reports yesterday, all the posts I was seeing on social media. Everybody leaving the coast is basically invading all the stores in the mountains. People reporting, gas lines, people binging for water and stuff at convenience stores, Walmart up in the mountains and stuff like that, because when they left the coast, they weren't stocked up or whatever. Yeah, and the thing with Camp Lejeune is it says here that's 40,000 people. That would be a major effort, and you're going to have some people that stay anyway, just because of the security nature of the whole place. But lots of good images of the typical storm preparations. People filling sandbags. Who was it? North Carolina Prepper or what's the guy's name? One of the YouTubers that's in North Carolina did a video about filling sandbags by himself. How that's no fun. That was a good video. But get it boarded up and get out. Especially if you're directly on the coast like that. That's a vulnerable position. People going to a shelter. People already lined up for shelters. He's going to surf it out, I guess. Says here, the fellows from Ohio says he's going to ride it out in the vacation rental on Kill Devil's Hill and the Outer Banks. That might be a bad decision. The Outer Banks definitely not going to be a place to be, I would say. Walmart's boarded up. But lots of interesting photos. Obviously, you get lots of photos of cleared shelves out there, etc. So if you weren't prepared for the hurricane, you might be too late. You're not going to be able to buy it anywhere. So, and if you know anybody, if they hadn't gotten out, I would advise them to get out, unless they live in a real hardened structure like one of the barracks or, I don't know, some brick-like building. A double wide ain't going to cut it, if you know what I mean. A double wide would not cut it. Who else we got in here? And I'm doing good. Yeah, things like Storm of a Lifetime. Yeah, all the old timers are comparing it to one from the 50s. I think it was Hazel. and when they're doing their comparisons, which did a lot of damage to North Carolina, and now there's just more people and more stuff on that coast that wasn't there 50, 60 years ago. So that's definitely the biggest thing you have to think about is the stuff that wasn't there to get destroyed 50, 60 years ago is there now, and it's very vulnerable. That's probably why we're going to see some really probably high storm damage, etc. Alicia, good morning. How you doing? Who says the shelters will be safe? Well, the shelters are selected usually in cases like this because they are hardened, brick built, concrete buildings, stuff like that. No windows, school gymnasiums with no windows, stuff like that. And they're on high ground. But you are relying upon the local county government's done their due diligence. But they've done this stuff before. They've evacuated and activated a lot of these shelters and stuff, so they kind of know how good they are. You are taking chance, I guess, but if you need to stay close to home for whatever reason, it's a better option than staying in a double wide or something in some of these areas. Oh, Food Forest, did you have a lot of fires that were put out by the rain? That's a big combination. I hadn't heard about that. Up your way. Obviously, it's on the top line of Drudge. That's the big concern is the stall, if it stalls near the coast, and the flooding that could ensue. James McIntyre's with us. Well, yeah, Iris, who's got a police call? You got a police call during the storm, right? Of course they're not going to let everybody leave. Police call is paramount. Plus, they got to switch over duty. You can imagine all the things that the machine has to keep running, right? But some other things I saw as I was browsing the news outside of the hurricane that just kind of caught my eye. I guess there was a GOP office in Wyoming that was burnt down like 2 days afterwards. I thought that was kind of a bold move by the Antifa types, more than likely, I would think. It says it's intentional. Do you think? Just kind of caught me as odd that Antifa would try to up their game in such a deeply red, for lack of a better word, location as Wyoming. So it says Laramie, Wyoming. Caught fire early Tuesday morning, just days after it opened. And it appears to be intentionally set, said the Laramie Police Department. It is some various photos here of what was remained after they did get the fire out, etc. But doesn't seem like it was too big a fire, which makes me think that it was an incendiary device, like Molotov or something. And somebody looks like threw it through the window, but the police got in here the fire department got in there and put it out or whatnot before. This as a passerby called authorities as interior fire damage was limited. There's an apartment directly above the office that was not impacted. Elsewhere in town, party staffers found a defaced sign accusing a Republican House member of supporting fascism. Yeah, Antifa's working overtime in Laramie, I guess. They deployed a team. Antifa deployed a squad into Laramie, Wyoming. interesting move this time of year in a place like that. I found that kind of odd. We'll see what comes out of that, but it does look like somebody threw something, an object in there that tried to start a fire but didn't work so well as they had planned. They probably had a bad fuel starting mixture. Their accelerant probably didn't kick off like they thought it would. They didn't use a proper portion of Dawn dish soap probably mixed in. Something like that. I'll shut up. Get myself in trouble. Yeah, stupid Antifa, right, right, Alicia. That's the only thing it thought of when I kind of saw the headline. I was like, oh yeah, they're some teenagers feeling all revolutionary or something. So that was going on. There was another video making the rounds yesterday that I saw on the G Plus that was talking about this, how to explain the cause of the Syrian war in 2 minutes. And it was a 4-minute video, which was odd, but it was the video was referring to this guy here, but talking about how to explain the cause of the Syrian war in 2 minutes. And it says the last time President Trump launched a massive airstrike in Syria of April of 2018, Jeffrey Sachs on MSNBC just 2 days before the attack to give the American public a perspective they had never heard aired on a major network. During the panel, Sachs appeared to shock his host with analysis of how the 7-year-long war in Syria has fundamentally been fueled by covert regime change from the West and its Gulf allies. A rare, if not unheard of, subject for the show. That's crazy that people don't talk about that stuff. There was another really good video posted on the G Plus by Angel R yesterday about the long war and just the whole terrorism concept overall. But I think that was on the People's Tavern chats. If anybody's on that G Plus page for the People's Tavern, that was good. Oh, you think it was cheap alcohol, Irish? Will that do it? Like Mad Dog 2020 cheap, or just your 50% alcohol you get from the drugstore cheap? Your rubbing alcohol type. So it goes into things he told them. Did they have a video of this guy talking from 2016? I guess here it is. So I guess they're going to play it here. Let's see if we can get 2 minutes of an explanation and see if we agree or not. But it says that I think we do, because it says Sachs told the panel on MSNBC, we know they sent in the CIA to overthrow Assad. Eventually brought in both ISIS as a splinter group. It also brought in Russia. What we should do now is get out and not continue to throw missiles or have a confrontation with Russia. Can't argue with that. But let's see if we can get what came out of this.
So Jeffrey Sachs, chime in. This is very different than just a war between two countries. This is as convoluted as it gets and could get out of control. I don't think people might really conceptualize, maybe even not this president, how out of control this could escalate.
It's true, but I think we have to step back and not put this in partisan terms. This is a U.S. mistake that started 7 years ago. And I remember the day on your show when President Obama said, Assad must go. And I looked at you and Joe and I said, how's he going to do that? Where's the policy for that?
Right.
And we know they sent in the CIA to overthrow Assad. The CIA and Saudi Arabia together in covert operations tried to overthrow Assad. It was a disaster. Eventually, it brought in both ISIS as a splinter group to the jihadists that went in. It also brought in Russia. So we have been digging deeper and deeper and deeper. What we should do now is get out and not continue to throw missiles, not have a confrontation with Russia. 7 years has been a disaster under Obama, continuing under Trump. This is what I would call the permanent state. This is the CIA, this is Pentagon, wanting to keep Iran and Russia out of Syria, but no way to do that. And so we have made a proxy war in Syria. It's killed 500,000 people, displaced 10 million. And I'll say predictably so, because I predicted it 7 years ago that there was no way to do this and that it would make a complete chaos. So what I would plead to President Trump is get out, like his instinct told him, by the way. Before, yeah. That was his instinct. But then all the establishment, the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Pentagon, everybody said, no, that's irresponsible. But his instinct is right. Get out. We've done enough damage, 7 years. And now we really risk a confrontation with Russia that is extreme.
I can't argue with that, fella. Get out. So it's pretty much that easy. So that was interesting. And there was another video shared on the G Plus about all that. So that was there. That's on the Zero Hedge, and that's in your links below as well. And there was another article that kind of wrapped up with some things that happened through the week. Planes full of sick people. If you saw a couple of, I think 3 planes at least, and I think there were several in other European countries that all landed with a high number of feverish people in them over the last week or so, and causing a little bit of a stir, but kind of flew under the radar a little bit unless you're really looking for it. But planes went under quarantine when they landed at a couple of the different airports, and so this popped up on the Zero Hedge asking what's with all the planes full of sick people. This is via the Organic Prepper blog. And it starts out saying, has anybody else found all those planes full of sick people rather alarming? I think everybody that was paying attention, their first thing was, this is how bad movies start. But it was plane. Here it talks about the plane from Dubai to JFK. And there's a plane from Algeria to southern France, 2 planes from Europe to Philadelphia. And they break them down in each section here. But on the plane from Dubai to JFK, apparently, FYI, it says Vanilla Ice was on the flight. It said she's had this stupid song in her head ever since. On that plane to JFK, approximately 100 passengers and members of the crew became ill. The CDC met the flight at the airport and determined that out of the plane full of 521 people, about 100 of them reported fevers of over 100. 19 of those people were found to be ill. 10 or 11 reports vary, of them enough to be hospitalized. The 500 plus people were sent on their way all over the nation. That's one of the big highlights here, the concern. Until you know what it is, why would you send them away? But especially when we've been having, these issues with Ebola and things popping back up. But obviously they didn't travel to Africa, supposedly. Supposedly this was on the heels of the Hajj to Mecca. But the Emirates Airlines Home Office told U.S. officials it believes this incident was caused by food poisoning, but passengers also suggested a nasty flu virus. One of the passengers, Aaron Sykes, said, even well before the flight, when we were online getting on board, In Dubai, there were people that were obviously very sick that should not have been allowed to get on board the plane in the first place. And that's when you see that statement right there, that really should key you off to a couple things. When things get really bad in other countries, we can't rely on other countries to do any filtering. They're going to land here regardless of whatever screening protocols or restrictions or messaging we've put out to tell people, like we were doing with Ebola, that if they have a fever, they can't get on a plane. And some of those countries are doing that to a certain extent. But if things are bad for another reason, like much worse, more widespread disease or famine or unrest, those countries aren't going to screen out people. They're just going to allow them to continue on over, I guess you would say. So that's something to think about. You just want to have all these planes full of basically refugees or evacuees just landing. CNN reported, I think this is a little sarcasm, but don't worry. CNN reported that it's just the flu or common cold, no biggie. I don't know if I've ever had the common cold and have a fever over 100. I don't know that that's ever happened. So that was September 5th, actually. It was that long ago that that happened. Now, if it was just one plane, she says, I'd be kind of creeped out because I read a lot of books about pandemics that kill off most of the world's population. But I probably wouldn't have thought much about it. But it wasn't the only one. So then you had the plane from Algeria to southern France. On the same day, a UAE flight was briefly quarantined, 147 passengers into the south of France, where it held for over an hour. It was feared a child that boarded the plane was suffering from cholera. The plane traveled from Iran and Algeria, where the recent cholera epidemic had left 3 people dead and 70 contaminated. The other 147 passengers, 3 p.m. The good news, as it says at the bottom, the little boy did not have cholera, so they finally determined that after letting everybody go. 2 planes from Europe to Philadelphia the following day, which would be September 6th. 2 different flights from Paris and Munich landing in Philadelphia became ill enough for the CDC to be contacted. According to Customs and Border Patrol, 12 passengers who had attended the Hajj in Mecca had complained of sore throats and coughs and were not considered to be extremely ill. All 250 people on the flights were assessed, and everyone who wasn't sick was released. Keyword here, sick yet, to go travel where they were going. We've all seen the pandemic movies. You could easily be carrying something and not get sick till days later. And then you had a plane from Nigeria to London. The flight happened before all the other flights, but the information just came out on the news on the 8th. A Nigerian naval officer has been diagnosed with monkeypox. Well, that's concerning. But not until everyone was already gone from the flight to their corners of the earth. So she asked a question, what is monkeypox? So we'll briefly go through it. You don't want to get it. It's a rare disease that primarily occurs in remote parts of Africa. It's similar to smallpox. Although monkeypox is much milder than smallpox, it can be fatal. If you ever see pictures of monkeypox, it's brutal. Yeah, it's not fatal, but it's like you have just one, I can't imagine what smallpox looked like compared to what you see the pictures of monkeypox. It's transmitted from people to various wild animals such as rodents and primates. Limited secondary spread through human to human transmission, so it's not quite as virulent as chicken pox, but between chicken pox and smallpox, I guess, kind of. It's like an intermediate type of disease like that. There's no specific treatment or vaccine available, though prior smallpox vaccination is highly effective in preventing monkeypox, based on her sources. So the English health authorities released that the wider public is considered to be safe and very low risk. the clinical director at the infection of the Royal Free said monkeypox is in most cases a mild condition which will resolve. So it's no big deal that, we let this Nigerian officer travel with all these people who were directly exposed to it, essentially, and we just let people go their way. There's no concern that it could spread throughout the country, basically, or wherever else they were traveling. I wonder if they actually try to track down all the people. They usually would try to track down the people on that plane, at least give them warning signs and tell them if you have these symptoms, go see your doctor. You could have been exposed to monkeypox. It doesn't sound like they even did that. So to summarize here, as we're winding up along, I have to wind this up here. But the article summarizes that we're probably not looking at anything, but the concern is the process, the way this all went down. Two things should give us pause. First is just how easily an illness can spread from one part of the world to another. Yes, it's the pandemic worst case scenario that air travel helps spread it extremely quick. The Spanish flu in 1918 or the plague of the dark ages. Like, the air travel can rapidly spread it so fast that there's not going to be any reaction time. Secondly, if this happens all the time, why are we just now hearing about all these cases? Is this some kind of subtle hint that a massive pandemic is coming? And we just talked about that yesterday. CDC put out their message for this fall flu season. As we talked about at the end of the lunchtime chat, CDC had put out the information about get your flu shot. It's going to be bad. The flu season's going to be bad. But Gates warned, this fellow here at a Massachusetts Medical Society and the New England Journal of Medicine warned that we are not prepared for a major pandemic illness. There's one area through where the world isn't making much progress, and that is pandemic preparedness, which is partially true, but I think there's a lot of things in our advantage too compared to the past. But here, Gates presented a simulation to the Institute of Disease Modeling that found the new flu, like the one that killed 50 million people in 1918, and the 1918 pandemic would now likely kill 30 million people within 6 months, which, considered a proportion of the population and consider how fast it spreads, is really, that's almost like a win. That's like, since we have more people on the earth, shouldn't it kill more people if it's really going to be that much more of a disaster? But if it's less, then okay. We're getting some advancements there, I would say. Even though 30 million is a lot, but if it's less than last time when we got more people around to spread it, wouldn't you just say it's kind of taking its course? The disease that next takes us by surprise is likely to be one we see for the first time at the start of an outbreak, like what happened with SARS and MERS viruses. The world needs to prepare for pandemics in the same serious way it prepares for war. And the one time the military tried a sort of simulated war game against a smallpox pandemic, the final score was smallpox 1, humanity 0. Don't think it would be quite that bad. We know how to prevent smallpox. If people just have to make good decisions. The problem is bad human decision making when you have things like smallpox. Now, a flu like SARS, MERS thing, respiratory illnesses are going to take their toll, but our improved diet and our improved medical care are going to create huge combat multipliers, for lack of a better word, that you can't discount. While you may have a large number of people getting sick, you're going to have a larger number recover. The smallpox one is one that could be of a concern, but people act like people didn't have smallpox 300 years ago when they had no, people gained an immunity and they continued on.
It doesn't kill everybody. It kills a high percentage. But to say that the final score was smallpox 1, humanity 0, humanity would already be gone because smallpox ran rampant for centuries before. So to think that we're just going to lose now when we have all this advanced care and everything else, I think is kind of, what's the word? Alarmism, I would think. Smallpox would suck, but don't think it's going to wipe out humanity. Just like we were all panicked about Ebola. Yes, nobody wants to get Ebola. But as we've seen with high degrees of medical care, survival rate is upwards of 90%. Only your vulnerable populations, people that already have conditions, bad health, are the ones that are going to succumb to those things if you get treatment quickly. If same with these pandemics or even the flu season, your elderly and your young are the most vulnerable. People that are middle-aged, healthy people are not that big of a concern. Now, the big concern is, just like in 1918, the biggest hit were the middle-aged, healthy, because it was a different strain. And that's the big pandemic scenario where the virus is different as such that it really attacks the middle-aged people who have immunity to other strains of flu, and that runs rampant, and it causes the way it is described to me, and the way I understand it, is it causes the immunity of somebody who is immune to these other viruses to kick into overdrive, and basically your immunity overwhelms you. Your body's reaction to this new virus overwhelms you. What do they call it? There's a term for it, and I can't remember it. Cytokine storm. Look that up. I think it starts with a C. Cytokine storm, where your body, the virus is such that it attacks the middle section of the population that normally isn't affected much by the other flu strains. And that's what they think the 1918 flu was, because it attacked so many people of the middle age from like World War I. A lot of people that brought it back from around the world that were in the military and stuff like that. Hey, we had Wes S. and ZPD Survival check in with us. M. Long checked in with us. You're late, but you're always on your own time. That's all good. There's all links below if you wanted to check it out. Anything we talked about. Mostly it's about the hurricane. Stay prepared out there. I guess if you're in the Carolinas or an adjacent state, you're going to get really, really wet. If you're on the coast, you shouldn't be on the coast. I think would be some good advice to anybody. See, checking up on the comments out here before I check out here, see what we got going on. James says, I bet I told 5 or 6 times she should get out of California because of all the stupid garbage. If you're paying for the U-Haul, let's do this. We'll have to pitch in a GoFundMe for J-Max U-Haul. I'm with you. Yeah, that's the hardest thing. I get it. It's not like you can just drop everything and leave. There is other concerns that go with that. All right, Ann's getting ready for work. Have a good day. Irish went back to work. We're all going to sneeze and become zombies and jump off a building every time the wind blows. Why let the people disperse? Yeah, it's a good question, Wes. But, I mean, they maybe just didn't get into the detail of it. But, again, they have passenger manifests on all these planes. If they're coming through Customs and Border Patrol, they can get that information from the CDC like they did with Ebola and track people down and contact them again, say, if you have these signs and symptoms, go to the doctor, which is hopefully is what's going on. They didn't explain it in depth. But, you know, I know people don't want to overreact when you have a plane, full of what seems like all sick people, but you think it would raise some concern. But I guess after a few hours of screening people, they're probably like, yeah, this is nothing. And just the news and the story makes it seem worse than it is. But it just highlights those two things she was talking about in the articles. The two biggest things there is how quickly it can happen and kind of those issues. But again, I think another thing is that if Ebola, we kind of relied on front departure nation screening. We relied on those Ivory Coast and Niger or whoever to screen on their end before people left. In a big, large event that's really bad everywhere, not just targeted Ebola, but something bigger, then we could have lots of problems because a lot of people are just going to be let through. People are going to get sick en route because they don't have symptoms when they leave the airport, because they were doing temperature screening during the Ebola thing. If I remember the stories right, they were screening people's temperatures as they got on the airplanes as part of a procedure to do their due diligence. But in a bad pandemic of some sort, do we think they're going to be doing that for us, for our benefit, when everybody's trying to get out of there to get to a more advanced country with more advanced health care, more advanced support systems? Yeah, probably not. Especially if somebody's family member, and if somebody's their own family member and they're the ones doing the screening, or they get paid enough, Hey, Slicer G's with us. Good morning. How you doing? Yeah, exactly, Wes. We talk, modern medicine will slow the death rate of just about anything. That's what I took exception to that one statement at the very bottom that where the guy said that in his study, this Michael Jacobs fella, was it him or the one review, or Gates said that in the simulated war game, military game, the final score was smallpox 1, humanity 0. What kind of scenario are they using? Because smallpox would have wiped out humanity a long time ago if humans are not capable of adapting and developing immunity, to things. Because lots of people had immunity to smallpox way back when. The whole stories of the smallpox blankets to the Indians was because the Europeans had developed an immunity and the Americans had not, and it passed on quickly through the Native Americans, even though it killed a lot of people. They still survived as well. So it's kind of a doomsdaying to say that smallpox is going to wipe out humanity. And like it even said in the scenarios of a pandemic, whereas Spanish flu in 1918 wiped out 50 million people killed, they're saying that most likely a new one would be 30 million people. So what's the population now compared to 1918? 5 times bigger, but we're going to reduce the number of killed. Like, that's modern medicine and nutrition and everything, all the other procedures we can go into. The common person can get the PPE to help you prevent you from getting smallpox or a pandemic. Your basic particle masks and everything else that you can get into to prevent you from getting any disease walking down the street or anything else. Especially me in the U.S., we're far removed enough we can isolate ourselves. So a little bit of fear mongering, maybe, in some respects. Not that we want to have a pandemic happen, but we could probably write it out a little bit better than they think. Especially with how, just as people can travel quickly, messages can travel just as quickly and effectively through all the social media and everything else, that unless it is the zombie virus that just takes you over, we'll be able to get the word out and isolate people and take care of things, right? Looks like ZPD or Food Force checked out. Hope he has a good day getting out of the. Hopefully he's drying out a little bit. It sounds like he's recovering from a bit of rain. Slicer G's with us, hanging out. Right, Barry? Yeah, and some good doses of colloidal silver would probably go a long way, Barry. The biggest problem with modern medicine is all the preservative nature of so many things that they try to put in your body. If we could go back, the original, the smallpox vaccine is still effective. Is if when it's delivered in the, it's still delivered in the original form, like they did in the old days. It's not been modified and engineered like every new vaccine is. If they could reduce profits a little bit and go back to vaccinating Louis Pasteur way, we would be a lot better off in those respects. Wes says never go to the Walmart pharmacy in a pandemic. Who goes to the Walmart pharmacy before a pandemic or at any time? Yeah, Barry, prevention is the only cure, right? Yeah, but in one of these scenarios, really, it's you got to isolate and quarantine, like it says in the tape pictures of the tape there. You got to isolate yourself from the problems as best as possible. The thing is, countries don't seem to be willing to do that. When we saw with Ebola, we just allowed people to fly all over. And we didn't restrict travel among those who weren't perceived to be sick, but very well could have been. In a bigger pandemic, you're going to have to make the tough decision that you're closing borders to all but some essential personnel and possibly some commerce. As long as you have really tight screening, you got to figure all these shipping container ships, things like that. You're going to want to still do commerce, but you're going to have to really strictly screen and check out people who come in on those types of commerce activities. The average tourist and stuff is going to have to slow down because there's just not enough people to support screening out those people. The new smallpox has 5 different pox in it. Yeah, the smallpox vaccine is always shed when you have it on your arm, Alicia. That's always been the case. You got to be very careful when you do get it. I mean, you got it band-aided up and everything. It's just like in the old days. You talk to your grandparent or your parents about how they go when they got their smallpox vaccination, what it was like. But then there's stories about some of those people, like when they were growing up, they'd play with, they'd have the scab there or whatever. They would mess around with it, but that's a good. People had some bad stories of that too. You get that in your eye or anything, it was a bad day. But that hasn't changed really in the last 100 years the way they do that. Tommy boy, what's going on? Show some love. Everybody loves, right? Yeah, right, Barry. The refrigeration, sanitation, education, all that. Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, good points. And all those things are going to be our advantage in any other pandemic scenario. All those things, communication, information, are going to help us get ahead of any medical care. Just being able to get to IV fluid, certain antibiotics, depending on what you get, all those things. All those things are going to help us, Barry. So, all right, folks, it's way past time to get out of here. Thanks for joining. Make sure you're getting prayers out there for the people on the Carolina coast in particular. Hopefully everybody's getting out of the way of this thing effectively. Bobby's solar homestead out there said he was sheltering in place down there. He's down there, Charleston. and I know there's a couple other YouTube channels that are mostly inland. Bobby was the most exposed, I know, close to the coast. But hopefully they are writing it out. Oh, there was another channel. What homestead channel was that? What was the name of that channel? Dang it. I just watched a stream last night. There's a fella setting up for a live stream of the whole event. He lives inland in North Carolina, like between Raleigh and Charlotte. And he is setting up a live stream with 2 cameras on his channel to write it out, because his wife works for some county services, and she's there, and he's writing it out in their cab. He explained it all last night really well. He was talking to Full Spectrum Survival last night on his chat, and they were going through some of the preparedness. He explained what was really good about that. He was explaining how he was going to use his electric car, whatever was the Prius. He was using a Prius to provide electricity throughout the storm, and he was explaining how the car would run basically for 6 days and provide electricity. As long with a full tank of gas, it could last 6 days, providing electricity and whatnot. So that's his backup generator kind of plan. It was pretty interesting. He had a pretty well thought out plan there to go along with writing that out. And I can't remember the dude's name, but it was something Homestead or Homestead something. I'm going to have to find my history here. I forgot. Yeah. How about using your history, dummy? You big dummy. Because this would be really good if he gets this all set up. And I'll just send everybody that way to go check that out. It might not only some good video, but some good points on Breakaway Homesteader. That's it. Breakaway Homesteader. Let me get a link for y'all. Go check him out. But with all the rain that's coming and whatnot, that could be an interesting live stream. And listen to that live stream he did last night. His last video from last night will give you some good ideas maybe for yourself on what he, kind of the way he's laying out and doing his thing to be prepared. But I found it very interesting. He explained it very well about how they're going to cord things up and provide backup power, and not too concerned, because when you're prepared, you're not concerned, right? HRM, good morning. How you doing? And I'll put that in the comments below as well, in case you can't link through on the side chat. Wes S., you guys stop being so positive. I was supposed to be scared and stuff. Oh, yeah, Tommy Boy, I'm sure Pop's Quest is in the area. Well, he's up north, too. Isn't he in Virginia? So he's kind of north. All right, thanks for getting stuff done while you're listening. Dual tasking is always good. All right, everybody have a good hump day. We'll talk to you later. Again, look out for those people out there in the path of this hurricane. Live free.